In this lesson, we're going to set up our basic player functionality by setting up some player movement. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is go ahead and build an environment for my player to walk on. So I'm just going to do this very simply, just by going to Game Object, Create Other, and Plane, just so my player has something to walk on while we move around. Okay, now what I need to do now is go ahead and bring in a Unity prefab, and I don't actually have anything in my project folders to do that, so I need to import that package. So let's go ahead and right click, and we're going to go to Import Package and Standard Assets Mobile. Now everything should be checked right from the beginning here, so let's go ahead and just hit Import. Now once this comes in, we're going to go to the Standard Assets, we're going to expand that, and then go to Prefabs. Now in the prefabs we have what's called player relative controls, and this is going to give us that third person over the shoulder view that we're looking for. Now you could use some other control schemes if you want to, like if you're wanting to make a 2D side scroller, you could use the prefab in this as well. So we're going to use this player relative control here. So I'm going to drag this in here. Now what I want to do before I move on any further is I want to make sure that everything is set to 0, 0, 0. Just so I have an origin point for all of my objects in my scene. So I'm going to select my plane. I'm going to make sure that it's at 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to do the same thing for my player relative controls. And then also my dual joysticks here. Now you'll notice that my dual joysticks are not showing up, and that's because I have this hide GUI. Okay. Now they are up here, but let's go ahead and hit 0 on all three, the X, Y, and Z, and you'll see that the dual joysticks will center up in our screen here. There we go. Alright, so now we're ready to go ahead and start building our player functionality. Let's get some movement going on in here. So let's go ahead and hit play. And I've actually downloaded the Unity Remote app to work on my Android tablet. So I should be able to go ahead and actually use the joysticks here to control my player. Now you can see that my capsule is moving left and right. I can move forward and backward. And I could also use my joysticks to look up and down and left and right. Now one thing that you do notice is that if I push my joystick up, it looks down. If I push it down, it looks up. So our controls are inverted here. Now I am not an inverted control kind of guy. Any shooter that I play, I like the normal controls. So I'm going to show you how to actually switch this up in the code very quickly. Now one thing that I want to take care of first is I want to go ahead and bring in a light here because I don't like that flat gray look. So let's just go to Create, and we're going to go to Directional Light. Just going to pull this up and rotate it down. So that way I can see everything nice and neat here. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to take care of is the inverted controls. So I'm going to select my player relative controls. I'm going to expand it and go to player. Now with that selected, you'll notice in the inspector we have the player relative control script. So let's go ahead and double click on that player relative control script, and it's going to bring up our mono-developed environment here. Now what I want to do is go ahead and scroll all the way down to the bottom in this script, and we have this rotate only the camera with Y-axis input. And this is actually controlling our up and down, our Y-axis look feature. So I'm going to actually change this camera rotation.Y to a negative, so that way it basically just flips how it's going to work. So right now it's going to be set to normal. Now that I'm actually modifying this player relative control script, I always like to make comments in areas that I change on scripts like this. This is not a script that we built here. It is a script that Unity provides you in your game project files. So we're going to go ahead and comment this out, and I'm going to call this basically this line changes from inverted to normal control scheme. Okay, just so that way you just have a little note there on any changes that you may have made in that line. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit save on this, and let's go back to Unity, and let's test this out, make sure that it's working properly. So if I take my joystick up, I'm looking up, and down is now looking down. Okay, so let's hit play on this. Now, one other thing that I have with this control scheme, with the player relative controls, is I have the ability to jump. And I don't actually want my player to jump in this game. So I need to go ahead and take care of that in our script. I need to disable that functionality. So let's go ahead and go to our MonoDevelop, and let's scroll up, and there should be a section called Check for Jump. Okay, and it looks like line 86 here. Okay, now what I want to do is actually just comment out a block of code just to disable this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the / and then Shift 8, which is an asterisk, and this starts commenting out everything after this. So I need to go ahead and create another one at the end of this movement.z equal or times equals in our multiplier. So that way I can just block out just this bit here. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Shift 8 and then / and that's blocked out that code there. So now if I hit save and I go to Unity, okay, I should be able to go ahead and hit play. And if I double tap that right joystick, nothing happens. Okay, all right. Now, we need to go ahead and set up the player movement based on what we want for our game. So with this player selected, we have forward speed, backward speed, and sidestep. Now what I want to do is I want to make these numbers a little bit closer, because then whenever we're playing as this player, whenever we're trying to step back, it goes a little bit slower. And we want this game to be fast-paced and kind of fun. So I don't want my backward speed to be exactly as my forward speed. So I'm going to go ahead and go 5. And my sidestep, I'm going to do 5 as well. Now my jump speed, I'm not going to do anything with it because I've actually disabled that functionality to check for a jump. Now the last thing is our rotation speed, and this is basically our look sensitivity. So if we're looking in the X direction, left and right, it's going to go pretty quickly. It's set to an 85. But if we're looking up and down, you'll see that it's set to 25. Now I want something that's going to actually move in all directions freely and nice and smooth. So I'm going to actually change my X and Y to 60. So that way they match and I get a nice even speed any way that I aim. Okay. Now, because we're developing this on the Android and we're using the touch sensitivity on this game, it's going to be kind of fast-paced, but whenever we're trying to aim, we want it to be smooth enough to where we can actually get accurate with our aiming. So that's why I dialed down the number on both of those, okay, and just made them even. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure that we haven't missed anything here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play on the Unity game. And let's go ahead and move our joysticks left and right. We can see that we can move forward and backward, nice even speed. And then we can look around nice and neat. Okay. Now, one thing that I notice is that whenever I'm looking up, I can't really look up all that far, and I can't look down that far. So the issue that I'm having here is whenever I'm trying to shoot ticks that are going to be on the ground, and they might be at my feet, I can't actually aim at my feet. So I have a rotation constraint on this player relative control. And I can actually find this by expanding the player in my hierarchy and my camera pivot. And if I go to camera offset, you'll see that we have this rotation constraint script. And I'm going to go ahead and set the minimum and maximum up a little bit higher so that way I can look a little bit easier. So just for right now, I'm going to change these to -40 and 40. And let's actually hit play and then change that, because if we're doing that in play mode, we're just doing some testing and it's not going to save those changes. Okay. So let's go ahead and hit play now. And now if I move my look stick up, you can see that I can look much higher and I can move and look much lower now. Okay. So now we're kind of dialing in on a player movement that we really like. And the next thing that we're going to do in our next lesson is we're going to set up the camera to be about the position that we want to see whenever we're playing this game. So we'll go ahead and get into the camera setup in our next lesson.